Well, good morning from the United States and good afternoon in the Netherlands. It's our pleasure today to have Bart Verheijen, if I said that correctly. Verheijen. I think it has to have a Verheijen in there better. I'll work on that, Bart. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bart is going to give you some background of his company and himself and tell you some good stories along the way. And he's going to be talking about, I'm going to call it knowledge sharing in a broad way. And then he's going to tell you what that means in the context of his company, Guru Scan. And then he's, I hope, going to give us a little demo and we'll go from there. So Bart, good afternoon and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Kendra. Happy to join. And well, nice to share my knowledge also in this way. So that's really good. I got a little demo prepared for later, so be able to show some of the stuff that I'll be talking about. And well, that will probably help us out to pull us through the whole story. And I'm really glad with the pronunciation. So the Verheijen, that's really spot on. Well, for everyone, so especially since, of course, your students probably will also be in the US. I am Dutch, which means I live in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, which is probably more famous than the Netherlands. So people know Amsterdam, but don't know about the Netherlands. And I also studied in the Netherlands in Nijmegen, which is a very small city in the east of the country. My background is in chemistry, so I did a master in organic chemistry, so that's organic synthesis of new molecules. And actually, during my studies, I already found out that I wouldn't be working in a lab for the rest of my life, so I wanted to do different things and sort of broaden my horizon a little bit. I looked at business studies. I did some courses in business studies also during my study. Went to work with a multinational called OC. It's a Dutch company. It has been acquired by Canon, so the Japanese copier printer, and I think they also make cameras. They make a lot of different things. So it has been acquired by Canon, and I worked there in their R&D function. Was actually my first, and it turned out to also to be my only job that I ever had. I did a little bit of chemistry research there. They also had chemistry research, so researching inks and toners and all kinds of sort of ingredients that you put into your printer or copier machine. But I very quickly went into other activities, new business development from R&D, so trying to sort of find places where we could get some additional money for all the brilliant stuff that people invented there. I did some long-term customer research, so looking at different customers and trying to envision how they would develop and what that would mean for our offering and products and services. Working on serviceization of the product, so not sell a product, but sell it as a service. So that's most famous. It's the pay per click. So you pay for every copy that you make instead of paying for the copying machine. Well, OC wasn't the only one doing that kind of work, but it turned out that's a really, really massive problem, which still today is for many industries something that they could improve on. If you look at industries that are used to sell products and now work as a service, I think there's still more to come there. And it's still something where you see that older companies tend to be really reluctant to make that change and make that different offering.
Bart, I'm going to put you on pause for just a second. I've got something weird happening on my screen, so hold on just a second. Now, my entire screen is frozen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see you as well. So
you can see me. There are squiggly lines, you're frozen, and I have no control over my computer. I have no idea what that is. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to save this recording if I can, but I'm going to exit. I didn't want you to keep talking if we have to start this over again. And
Yes.
you are the co-host, so I can leave and I'm going to close this out and I'm going to come back in. Okay?
Yeah, that's all right.
All
I'll
right.
just wait till you're back.
Sorry. Okay.
No
Hang
problem.
on. Oh, let me try that. Oh, look at that. All fixed. I'll edit this out. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's make sure this is working correctly. Yeah, it's still a little funny, but I think we're good. So let's go ahead and go. And can you want to talk now? Okay. Why don't you tell us about how you got into the business that you're in now?
Yes. So let me see. Well, maybe back to so OSE, my first job.
Yes.
I worked there at their R&D facility. OSE employed, I think, 24,000 people globally, of which roughly 1/10, so 2,500 people, worked in R&D. So that's technical development, new products, new inventions, working on many different technical areas. Basically, every technical background was to be found within the organization. So chemists, physicists, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, software people, UI, UX, so people literally making the interfaces of those machines and also the software interfaces. So many different areas of expertise there. And if you work at such an organization, big, complex, technology driven, you will know as an employee, even when you just started working there, you will know, like, you see the product that you deliver to the customer, whether it's a car or it's a printer copier or it's something else, it's a I don't know, household appliance, whatever it is, you will know that everything in that product, there's someone in the company who knows about that part, who knows about that little motor, or who knows about that roller, or who knows about that, well, whatever's in there.
Right.
It's just really hard to find as a regular employee, who is that person? Like, I need someone to tell me about this roller or this cleaner. Who is it? And that turned out to be quite a challenge. Well, let's not give all the different answers, but there were basically two things available at that time within OSE, and I would say, as far as my knowledge goes, that's still pretty much where a lot of companies are.
Mhm.
So there is a sort of people pages, sort of internal phone book, whatever. Um, if you know a name, you know, hey, I should be contacting Kendra Albright. You can type in that name and you can find her contact information. Maybe you can find her presence, like, hey, what are her working days? And you can generally find a more or less like a work location where she might be. So if you are in that same location, you could probably just hop by and see if she's there. That's something, and whatever the tool is that you're using, that's something that's available in, well, almost any company, I would say. The other thing that we had at the time, and that's also pretty common, is a document management system. So whenever you sort of finalize a piece of work, whether it's a plan or a way of working or a standard operating procedure, or it's a research review or whatever it is that you did, you sort of publish that internally. Depends a little bit on the levels of, like, how formalized that process is, but generally you have some sort of repository of agreed upon information. Like, there's something, you published it, you finalized, and that's available for everyone to find. Generally, there's some sort of secret number there, which says 2023, and then something and a code and maybe your name to it. So if you know the piece of information you're looking for, you can generally find it. If you only know some term that you're looking for, you generally use the wrong term because you don't know what you're looking for. So the term that you're looking for is not found. It's
Right.
named otherwise, which you don't know because you're not the expert. So
Right.
that's why you need that expert. Um, and if you do find if you do use the right search terms, you generally end up finding the most recent stuff first, where you probably be looking for a more like a descriptive article or a descriptive publication that may be 3 or 4 or 5 years old, maybe even older at times. That's the best point to start as a non-expert. You don't want to be looking at the really nitty-gritty details that someone published yesterday. That's not going to help your general question to get into that field of expertise. So those are basically the two things that we had, and that are, I think, still pretty common to most organizations if they're talking about knowledge and knowledge management. Um, One of the things we found out, and I think it's no rocket science, there are more people who found out about it, is that if people still want to solve knowledge issues, knowledge challenges, and they don't know where to go to, and they can't find it in the document management repository, what they'll do is they'll just ask their colleague.
Mm-hmm.
So they just lean over the desk, or they just use their team meeting in the morning, whatever the interaction is that you're having. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm looking for this or that. Does any one of you may know where I should go or where to find that, or who knows it? And then probably someone in that group will like raise their hands or their voice, whatever, and tell you, well, I would go there, or maybe my contact such and such might know about it, or I would go ask that project, or this, my former manager may know about it, whatever's the reason. And then they push you away to someone in their contacts. Well, you go to that person, you approach them, either just walking by in back in the old days when we all worked from the office. Maybe now that's all digital, but still, I mean, you reach out to that person and ask, hey, I'm looking for this or that. I want to learn more on this product or this component or this area of expertise or this customer. Can you help me out? And then generally that person asks a question back, like, hey, what do you want to know? And in a few like back and forths, you're sort of, well, I know something about it, but there are better experts. You may want to contact someone else, and they sort of push you in their network again. And generally speaking, people take about 3 to 4 steps to get to the right expert. Um, it can take quite a while because those, of course, before you take up such an action, maybe you get an out of office reply, someone's back in a week from now, someone's traveling, someone's busy doing other stuff and doesn't pick up your question within 1 or 2 days. So it can take quite a while before you found the right expert and that person has helped you out with the issue that you're working on. I see Kendra smiles, so she probably recognized this this way of working. And
It's every university. You've just described every university. We
yeah,
never talk
well,
to each other about our problems because we're siloed. Yes. And I've thought this for a long time, that every university needs knowledge management. And there are people out there, trying to make that happen. And they're not having a lot of success, not yet. But I think that's still because knowledge management is still not clearly understood, and people don't really understand what the benefits of it could be. And that's why I'm having you here to talk about this, because this is like one of the most important problems that especially large organizations have. And it's, our students are going to graduate and go work for some of these really big companies, or they'll have a lot of customers and they're going to need to know who's doing what. And so I imagine that your system or the ideas behind it could certainly apply to a range of needs that they will have. So this is great.
yeah, so indeed, and it's so that's basically what we found out. Like, hey, people are actually very likely to go to a person instead of going to a sort of information source, whatever it's a YouTube video or a document or whatever you have.
Right.
That's the first thing. And then sort of if I had to describe my sort of eureka moment, so the sort of moment of insight, it's a little story that happened when I was working. As I mentioned, I'm already that old that when I started working, we all worked in the office, so physically all together. And I just saw a colleague of mine sort of being a little bit frustrated, picking up the phone, saying, no, no, that's not what I'm looking for, something else, putting the phone down again, sort of doing something on his computer. And I could just see his frustration. So I asked him if I could help him out. And he responded like, no, 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 you can't help me. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm stuck. And you're also just a chemist just like me. So you will not know about this. Well, that's all right. I think he, especially in chemistry, definitely smarter than me. So it's um, still I was a little persistent. Still maybe just grab a coffee and sort of get away from that frustrating work then, and maybe you can just tell me what you're looking for. And then he told me he was looking for someone who could do an electromagnetic radiation measurement, which is indeed something I know nothing about. I still know nothing about it. Probably will never learn anything about it as well. But I happen to have been looking for that same expertise in the organization like a few weeks before. And I had found that person that was the most knowledgeable within the organization. And I had an appointment with that person. So I told him, well, I know nothing about that. So you're absolutely right. But I do have an appointment. So if you want, you can just join me, because that person is, I think he was on in a conference, or at least he wasn't around at the time, but he should be back in a couple of days. And that's basically when my sort of eureka moment came. Like, we are all building up these networks of go-to people for different knowledge areas, different knowledge domains. So you do that in your private life as well. Like if your car breaks down, you may have an uncle that's really good with cars, or if your computer breaks down, you may have like your niece who's really good with computers. Like, you go to different people for different stuff that you need help with, whatever that is. It can be, I mean, I just described technical stuff, but it can also be like, hey, your relationship ends, who do you consult? You're looking for a different job, who do you consult? You may move to a different part of the country, who do you consult? There are different people sort of bringing you that information. Same things going on in companies, in organizations.
Yep.
But we have a really small understanding of what other people can actually help us with.
Right.
So I was judged as a chemist, so therefore not knowledgeable on what my colleague needed, which was right. He wasn't wrong. He was right about that. But I knew a lot more, not myself, but I had that in my network. I could help him to get to that expertise.
Yep.
And that's something that is, of course, it's an abundant resource that's there. There are so many people that can help you with the stuff that you're looking for. Only if you would sort of take that effort of asking them, or asking them to share that knowledge network. And that's basically what we're trying to do from the start, is get people in sort of positive interaction with each other, within their team, within the groups that they work with. Like, what knowledge do you need to get your work done? I need knowledge on electromagnetic radiation measurements, or I need knowledge on Italian, I need knowledge on artificial intelligence, or whatever you need.
Right.
And then get them to share their knowledge network. So who do you know in your network that's good at that area? And that's basically still what we do today. So collectively define what you're looking for, what's of interest to get your job done. And of course, that can be a sort of rolling ID. Something that's useful like a year ago might not be useful today. It might be something new. So that should be a continuous development. And share your knowledge network and have everyone participate in that. So it's not something you do with just your management, or just the HR team, or just the KM team. It's something that you need to involve everyone in. Especially in one of the first things we did, we found the secretaries being extremely good at pinpointing experts.
Right.
And we investigated why that was. And it happened that because it was in a technical environment, and these secretaries had absolutely no technical background or experience.
Right.
And still, I still remember interviewing a few of them, and they said, well, we see like what's happening in the company. We know like, hey, there's something wrong with a certain customer, there's something wrong with a certain machine or technology. And we know that as soon as that thing happens or if something goes wrong there, my boss, manager or director or whatever, senior vice president, whatever their role is, they will call me saying, hey, schedule a meeting with this and that expert because something's wrong in that area and I need to be like up to date. So they make that connection like, hey, something's wrong over there, always that expert. Someone's wrong over there, always connect to that. So they have a sort of network in their heads saying, hey, if something's wrong with that area of expertise, I always have to connect to that expert. So they know everyone's expertise without understanding the technical depth and detail of that expertise. So they were really, really good at pinpointing expertise in people within the organization simply based on the type of work that they've been doing.
Right. They could provide really good keywords.
Really good keywords and really well connect that to the right experts in the organization.
I would think librarians would also be good at that if you have a library in an organization like that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, the like supporting like support functions that really work with people,
Right.
those are really good.
Yeah.
Support functions that do more like technical stuff or administrative stuff generally not doesn't really help that much, but
Right.
those kind of support functions, because that's basically what they're there for. So it's just tapping into their minds, and that's really, really helpful.
I think it's because they don't know the nitty gritty, but they know the big names for what these people are doing enough to provide, like the highest level taxonomic, category, So it's really interesting that you've recognized. I would never have thought about the secretaries, but when I think back about my own experience at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and the secretaries knew everything, but only at that very high level, but they could juggle all of these things because they only worked at that level. If you had to ask them a technical question, they'd have no idea of the answer.
No, no, and that's and of course that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for that like connecting everything together, like this, I don't know, organizational super glue or
Yeah,
like
that's good.
really binding that all together. And that's I think it's almost intrinsic to that role of being a like secretary to the board or secretary to a few managers, whatever that how that role is defined. That's basically what you're doing.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So keep
Yeah,
going.
well, so
Yeah.
so we made the solution to maybe facilitate that process, to facilitate that process of both ideation, so coming up with new knowledge topics, and also connections, so making connections to experts. Um, First, we tried to make that an internal venture within OSE, but that sort of stalled pretty quickly. So then we made a spin out together with my co-founder, who's left the company already by now. So,
Mm.
but we spun out of OSE with the two of us. Started off doing like small scale customer engagements, and basically the most interesting things we did there were working with different groups of people in organizations to really map their knowledge network. Um, we made that. We made both online tools, but also offline tools. Very simple stuff. I just put brown paper on the wall, put a whole team in a room, like 15, 20 people, and just have them work through like, hey, what's important for your team for the next year, next 2 years, 3 years, whatever is the scope. Um, what's going to be really important, and those could be technical things. Those could be maybe even a customer segments. Like, hey, we want to get into healthcare. We want to get into education. We want to get into whatever you want to go to. We
Mhm.
want to go abroad. We want to expand our business in Europe, or we want to expand our business in Asia. So those can be all kind of things. Doesn't have to be technical or really hard knowledge. Can be also things like that. You just list that on these big pieces of paper. You shouldn't do more than 20. That's already stretching it a bit, but
Mhm.
best is like 10 to 15 of those like big things that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Just put them on the wall, sort of work through it. Does everyone understand what it means? And then we take a small break. And then after that, people are gifted like these post-it stickers, and they
Mhm.
can just walk around, sort of look at those topics and say, well, who do I know that could help us out to make that step? Who has the knowledge? Do I know someone, well, if it's a country or an area, who lives there? Do I know someone who has been building a business there? Do I know someone who, I don't know, did research on that area, who is working there? And just everyone's just putting down names of people. Of course, very often the primer focus is on internal people within the organization. But of course, you can also list people outside of it. You can list former colleagues, you can list friends of yours, you can list, well, anyone you know.
Yeah.
And then literally like in front of your eyes, it takes quite a while because every individual in that group has to literally like one by one pass all these pieces of paper and just think about it and think about names and write down the names and manually put up all those stickers on the wall. So it takes quite some time.
Yeah.
But just by doing that, you sort of, if you look around the room, you just see that collective knowledge network sort of appearing on those different sheets of paper, and that's amazing. And then you can, after that, you can sort of consolidate and do some sort of first learning step. Like, I don't know, you have 15 pieces of paper on the wall, and you can just take a step back and look at it. Say, hey, we have 15 things that we think are important, but we see like 3 of them hardly have any names on there. So we think they're really important to do what we want to do with the team or with the group that we're with, but we can't even come up with any names. Isn't that weird? Shouldn't we take
Yeah.
action and like expand our networks there? We're just getting started. We should do something. We cannot activate the people we know because we hardly know anyone.
Right.
Then look at, for instance, well, you can look at internal versus external. So you see like, hey, we got, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 people on any one of those sheets. Hey, for one of these teams, we see that, I don't know, there's only 2 internal people, and all the others are externals. It's consultants, it's external researchers, it's maybe even competitors. Like,
Right.
great. We know how good our competitors are.
Right.
We want to be there.
Right.
Hey, what do? Can we hire the people that are listed there? Are there any, for instance, if it's researchers or university people that are there, you may be able to get their students to work for you, or you may be able to, well, there are many things that you can do from the stuff that's there. But if it is a strategic area for you, then generally it's not a good thing if there's very little people from your own organization there. So that's more or less what you'll be looking for there. Um, and well, we've done those sessions quite a lot. They're big fun. It's really fun to do. They take quite some time. So with a team, you would generally spend like 3 or 4 hours on such a session because it's a lot of discussion. People have to understand what everyone else means. It
Right.
takes quite some time, and it's not really scalable. So as I mentioned, 10, 15 topics, that's more or less what you can do. Otherwise, you're really stretching the group's ability and the time that you have with such a group. So that's quite a big stretch that you're taking. And of course, people have to be together to do it because you're literally walking around the room to do that.
Right.
So that's more or less when we started to gradually build all those different steps into software solutions to support those steps: ideation, building the network, visualizing the network
Right.
in a software solution. And that's basically, well, the first we did some separate development paths, so devising some smaller solutions. And I think about less than 2 years ago, I think a year and a half ago, somewhere mid 2021, we launched our first integrated software solution where you can really do all these different things like synchronous, asynchronous, looking at different network views. You can do all the mapping within that one software suite. Still, we're always developing on that solution. So literally, I would say almost every month it's better than it was last month. So it's small iterations, but we're always progressing. I would say 50-50 based on our own IDs and on customer IDs. Things that customers ask for, very straightforward, or sometimes it's more based on their challenges. Like they tell us like, hey, we would be looking for something that could help us to do this or to facilitate this process. Could we do that with your solution, and how would that look like? And then very often we sort of try and sort of make the solution a little bit better. And we provide it as a SaaS solution, so that gives some constraints as well, because that means that customer specific stuff needs to be configurable, so it can never be in the solution, because basically every customer uses the same product, the same service, but we can configure some things to make it sort of look a little bespoke or have some emphasis on different processes that are relevant for that specific customer.
Right, right. Awesome. Yeah, I have a couple of things I want to talk to you about when we're done.
So that's great.
Yeah.
No, so that's that's basically it. It's mapping the informal knowledge network, and having the tool to do that in a group of people. And that group of people can be an organization or a company, but it can also be a network of people that want to do something together, that want to get together. We've done very nice assignments with groups of people, for instance, working together to I don't know, prevent. We did some stuff on criminal prevention in the Netherlands, where people were dumping what do you call that? Criminal waste. So if they've done some criminal activities, generated some waste, they don't want to go to the normal waste disposal because they will get arrested straight away. So they just dump it somewhere.
Yep.
Someone finds it, generally someone who's really engaged in solving that issue straight away, because they're also like they're in the forest or whatever. And that's where it gets complicated, because then the one who finds it generally wants to get it cleaned up as fast as possible, which
Right.
is a very understandable approach. But then that doesn't help to solve the problem. So what you want to do is you want to stabilize it, then you want to get some detective in there to do some investigation, and then you want to clean that up.
Right.
And if you don't know about those different stakeholders in that process, you may think that cleaning it up straight away is the best thing to do. But then it really helps if you know where to find those other experts and those other stakeholders. And also, I mean, we had water companies also involved in that knowledge inventory, and they actually had a really good early warning system, which no one else in that group knew about at the time. So they were measuring their water intake, and if there's changes there, that's a sign that upstream there's something wrong. So if you have investigative capacity, you can sort of allocate that somewhere upstream where you found an anomaly in your water intake, and that hugely increased the fines. And then you have early detection, and you're better able to solve that problem. So,
Wow.
and that's network advantage. So there's different people, different organizations working together to solve a common problem or a common cause. In this case, it was just crime happening in the community, and everyone was on the same page. Everyone wanted to solve that problem, so no problem at all there. Just being able to find the other people and know what they do in that whole stakeholder field already helped them a lot.
There seems like there could be infinite numbers of applications for this. You know, there's so many, I can think of so many projects that, in science, just because I was at the Oak Ridge National Lab, that I can think of so many projects that would benefit from this, and I have no idea if they're doing it now. It's been years and years since I was there, but I bet they're not. I bet they're not doing this. So anyway, it's much needed, clearly. So
Yeah, I think so too. It's always, and the hard thing is that you never really know upfront what you're gonna find. So it
mhm.
is, there should be some sort of interest, and there should be some sort of awareness, like, hey, we're missing something here. And that's generally like the push to get people to do something like this. Or that's also what we get quite often. Something went wrong. So um, without because that's something that I cannot share the name of the organization, but
Yeah,
let's say a big organization that's sort of developing something in the electronics industry. That's more or less what I can tell you. Like they're sort of working with the R&D team on the next sort of step in the development. It's well, if you're in that field, some sort of logical next step. So people will generally know that all the competitors are also working on that next step because it's something logical to do.
right.
Um, if you're in an industry, you can probably come up with like tons of these kinds of projects. It's incremental innovation. You have to do it, you have to put in the work, but it's not like a huge game changer. But it's something that's to be expected to come out in the next couple of months, maybe a year from now. They've been
That's
doing that project with, I was told, around 50 research engineers. So that's costs a lot of money. They spend a lot of stuff. They take their salaries, of course. So that's not something you do on a Friday afternoon. It's a serious project.
right.
They
It's
are at a point where they sort of contact their like prospective customer, one or two of the like the bigger customers they have. That's a logical place to sort of get started with, like, hey, we're doing this project. We're like, I don't know, 60-70% done. So we more or less know what it will look like. We more or less know like the design dimensions of the end product. And we want to have some discussion with you. Like, does this fit what you want? And maybe already gauge a little bit like how many of those you want to order in a couple of months from now.
right.
And basically those people, that customer responds saying, oh wow, that's great, and when do you want to come? Yeah, I don't know, in a month from now, whatever. And oh, that's great, your colleagues from the other country are also coming that day, so that's fun. You could also meet them over lunch, and then we'll have them in the morning and we'll have you in the afternoon. And then they're like terrified, like, shit. They said, yeah, that's all right, we'll see you then. And they hang up the phone. They call their colleagues at another development center somewhere else and saying, yo, you're having the appointment there. What are you going to do there? Yeah, where we made this. And well, long story short, they basically did the same work there as they did in the other place. So they had two similar projects. Then they started running a bigger inventory and they found out they were doing the same project at another place, but it wasn't that far yet. So they've been doing that same thing, which is 40, 50 people investing that effort for about a year in three different places.
Wow. Think about that cost.
And of course, if things like that happen in government, you'll see it in the newspaper or on news websites because it will be investigated and it will be publicized. But things like that happen in commercial organizations like all the time. And
Yeah.
because it's not that open, they can sort of, I'm not sure if that's an English
Yes.
saying, but
Yes.
brush
Right.
it under the carpet, like
Yeah. Yeah.
make
We say sweep it under the carpet. Same
sweep
thing.
it
Yeah.
under the
Yeah.
carpet, so
Yeah. Yeah.
make it disappear. But if you talk to people in organizations, like, I mean, reinventing the wheel, doing things like again and again and again, while you have already done that in your organization, you just don't know that it happened, or you just don't know the person who did it. That happens all the time. And I think that's very often, if that happened, then people start calling us saying, hey, this just happened to us. We never want that to happen again.
Right.
Could you help us to connect the different people that are knowledgeable to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
It's funny. I have a story from Oak Ridge National Lab, and I was a librarian there. And once a year, the scientists would come to the library and ask us to run a Web of Science in those days, or not Web of Science. In those days, it was the Science Citation Index, and to run a search of the database for the Science Citation Index and pull up all the numbers of publications of theirs that were cited, right? So the more cited publications they had, that went into their performance review, and their salary increases were based on that as one performance indicator. So it was things like numbers of publications, prestige of the journal, how many times it was cited, et cetera. And I would talk to these people and get to know a little bit, like you said, about what they did and that sort of stuff, so that I knew how to focus the search. Because in those days, end users couldn't do their own searching because there was a command language for searching through dialogue. And what was really interesting to me was they did not want their colleagues to know anything about what they were doing, because they were all competing for the same funding. And if they were the first ones to get whatever they were trying to do and could get the patent, it meant money for them. How do you facilitate knowledge sharing in competition like that?
Well, I would say even then, so it gets harder when there's like a lot of internal competition and people are literally fighting for the same funds.
Yeah.
But still, I would say making an inventory of who knows what sort of also postpones the real sharing of knowledge. So I can say that you're an expert in whatever sort of technology or area of expertise without you having to share what you know. So you don't have to write it down. So you can still make that inventory. And as soon as I sort of contact you saying, hey, Kendra, I'm writing this proposal to get this fund. And do you want to help me? Say, well, no, I don't want to, because we're also writing a
Right.
proposal. So, or we're competing for that fund or
Yeah.
for that money, or so I don't want to help you.
Yeah.
And in general, though, I would say, especially within organizations, so of course there are internal competitions as well. I mean, it's not all uh, it's not all happy, love, peace, and happiness and kumbaya in organizations.
Right. No.
But in general, people are relatively okay with helping out, especially in times of need. So if you
Right.
manage to express like, hey, this is the problem I'm trying to solve or tackle, or this is the challenge that my team or my project is working on, and I guess that you have the knowledge to help us out with
Mhm.
the stuff that you've been doing. Can you spare 30 minutes or an hour to sort of hear my problem and help us out?
Yeah.
I would say in general, I mean, there are exceptions, but in general, people will do that. Will take that. If there's a genuine problem or challenge that you are willing to solve, people are willing to help you out.
You know,
It's another thing saying like, hey, here's my problem, Kendra. I've heard you're the expert, so here's my problem. I just throw it at you. Oh yeah, by the way, I need to have it solved by tomorrow afternoon, so please hurry up.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like, it's similar, but it's slightly different. And that's generally not getting people to help you out. That's
Mhm.
generally getting people to throw it right back at you and say, well, I'm not going to help you out ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to me that one of the ex externalities, I guess, that would come from your guru scan could be that it could also increase collaboration, so that competing groups could potentially work together to get increased funding. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I mean, if you can do things together to increase your likelihood of getting that money, increase like collaboration. I mean, if you're in the same university, you can do like collaborative um like signups for funding or for whatever. That
right,
probably, if you do it right, you could increase both your chances and
right.
maybe win from the other university or the other departments or faculties or whatever you're you're up against.
Right. Oh, that's great. I'm just making a note here.
Yeah, I think indeed, like collaboration, using that collective knowledge, and in the end, you will still have to put in the work yourself. So if you use like the available inputs that are there and all the insights, still you can't do everything all the time. So you will have to choose what you're going to research or which way you're going to sort of pursue anyway. So getting
Right.
as much useful information in the beginning to sort of increase your chances of success, I think that's never a bad thing.
Right. It's great. Do you want to give us a little demo?
A little demo, that's right. It would be good to highlight. I think you're gonna show like my contact details and stuff. If someone's listening to this or seeing this and wants to experience it for themselves, we organize what we call open workshops, generally about once every month. Um, they are on our website. You can also find them through my LinkedIn. If you sign up, you get an account to a demo environment, and we organize a 1 hour session where we sort of run you through the most basic functions, not doing a full product demo, but basically having you experience how this works and how nice it is. So if you listen to this and you say, well, I want to dive a little bit deeper,
Mhm.
just sign up for any of those sessions. It will take an
I
hour,
will.
and it's big fun. We always love doing those. It's also bringing a lot of interesting people together as well, which is also big fun. So, and the experience, learning by experience and learning by doing, is of course has a lot more benefit than just reading or looking at someone doing it. So I will give a demo, but I think that if you really want to
Just a
learn about
taste.
it, you should experience it.
Yeah. And I'll just add that on your website, you also give some business cases, which are really nice to look at, which kind of enhance and build on what you have been saying. So I'll make sure that the students have all the contact information so they can come and look at your website and know how to reach you through LinkedIn. Yep.
Great, great.
Thank you.